A lot of people showed up with signs, with whistles, and were just trying to get people's attention as they were being boarded into these flights, to tell them, no están solos, you are not alone. And they would just repeat that over and over again.
Hi, I'm Scott Leadingham. Thanks for joining us here in the unique Northwest. We are joined by Enrique Perez de la Rosa, Yakima Valley correspondent. Thanks for joining us today, Enrique.
Happy to be here.
Enrique is going to be telling us about some issues going on with immigration and customs enforcement using the Yakima Airport for deportation flights, and about the city of Wapato and issues involving the government there. So Enrique, let's jump right into it. First, tell us about these issues with ICE using the Yakima Airport for deportation flights. Why are they using an airport in Yakima instead of one, say, closer to the detention facility in Tacoma?
Well, this all started in earlier this year when an investigation from the University of Washington Center for Human Rights found that there were a lot of flights coming in and out of King County, and that Washington State played a big role in the deportation network. They also looked into the national deportation network, but that was the big finding. And the surprising thing for many people in Seattle was that Washington State and King County played such a central role in how people come in and out of the region while they're in custody of ICE. And so the executive of the county, Dow Constantine, he was compelled to take executive action and to ban these flights. And so that left ICE to look for somewhere else to base their flights out of, to get people in and out of the region and in and out of the detention center. And the natural place for this to happen was Yakima County. There is a long-standing relationship between the federal government and the Department of Corrections in the county to hold federal detainees. And for a long time, that's included deportation detainees, people under custody for ICE. And so it was a natural fit for people in deportation proceedings to come in and out of Washington State and in and out of the Northwest through the Yakima Airport.
Okay, so you mentioned this report, or this Center for Human Rights at the University of Washington kind of maybe kickstarting this and looking into it. And then more recently, they issued a report and some of their findings that were fairly critical of the city of Yakima and Yakima County for their role in these flights. Tell us a little bit more about what that organization found and what the response was from city officials.
Well, the report is part of a bigger project by the Center for Human Rights that, again, looks at the deportation network throughout the nation and how Washington State fits into that. Because of this development from King County banning these flights, Yakima has played a bigger and bigger role than ever before, and that includes at the county jail, but now especially at the airport. And the controversy behind that is that the airport, in taking in these flights, is taking in revenue through airport fees. Every flight is subject to a $200 landing fee, and if you use stairs at the airport, which are owned by the city just as the airport is, they cost an additional $60. And so for every flight, that's $260. They come in about twice a week, and they've been coming every week almost since May. And the city has said that they really don't get to decide who lands at the airport because they receive grants from the federal government for improvements at the airport, which have which pay 90% of improvement costs. They are subject to agreements with the federal government to make the Yakima Airport a public access airport. And that means that the federal government has the right to land and take off and use this airport for their own purposes.
So you were at one of these. There was regular demonstrations at the airport when the flights come in and out, and activists who are demonstrating against the use of the airport for this purpose. Can you just tell us a little bit of that scene, what that was like, what some of the people said, some of the signs you saw, and frankly, what exactly is their protest of? Are they the fact that these flights exist, that people are being deported who are deemed to be not in the country legally? So what are some of the protesters saying?
Well, the city of Yakima has set up this First Amendment zone where people can watch these flights take place, and for the community to have some oversight for this thing that's happening essentially in their city and in their backyard. And that's the way a lot of protesters and activists see it, is that they don't want to have this happen in their backyard, and they don't want their city government or city facilities to be used for the deportation of people who are under custody of ICE, and many of whom are seeking asylum in the United States. And so a lot of people showed up with signs, with whistles, and were just trying to get people's attention as they were being boarded into these flights, to tell them, no están solos, you are not alone. And they would just repeat that over and over again. And that got some reactions from people boarding flights, and they would look back and they would wave, sometimes with a smile. And meanwhile, they're walking up these stairs while their feet and their hands are chained. And really, that seems to be the purpose of this activist activity, is to make sure that there's some oversight, and to make sure that people don't feel alone as they're being deported. They've also been keeping track of how many people board and how many people come off of these flights, and taking pictures of everyone to connect lawyers with people that have been boarded, or family members who don't know who in their family has been deported, or just keep track of what's going on. And they've been keeping account of how many people have been in and out of the Yakima Airport on these flights. And it's about, I think since May, it's more than 2,000 people that they've counted coming on and off these flights, now that ICE is basing these ICE air flights from the Yakima Airport.
Well, interesting topic. We'll be sure to track it and have you report more on it as things go along. Okay, so elsewhere in the Yakima Valley, in the city of Wapato, there's been a lot of controversy and a lot of news coverage, frankly, about the city government going on, and in particular, the former mayor and city administrator. And that is not two different people, that's one person, and that, in fact, is part of the story, that it's not two different people. And so recently that person, Juan Orozco, was arrested and then released by a judge. Tell us more about the happenings in Wapato. It's quite the story.
Well, that's right. This started about, this all started through an audit from the state auditor's office, and which is a regular occurrence. About 2,000 audits happen in city governments every year. But most of them come back clean. There's not a lot of findings. But the findings that the auditor's office found in Wapato, they so alarmed them that they forwarded their findings to the Attorney General's office and to the Yakima County Prosecutor's office. And that spun off two things. First, the Attorney General's office filed a lawsuit against the city and against Juan Orozco for violating Open Meetings Act, and for Juan Orozco in particular for allegedly using his position as mayor to enrich himself by creating a city administrator position, which he immediately filled, and which paid $95,000 a year plus 6 months of severance pay that the city had to pay, even if he was fired. On the other hand, the Yakima County also launched an investigation, a criminal investigation, because of these allegations of criminal misconduct in city government. And the arrest came down because they thought Juan Orozco was a flight risk. But how that worked out is that he was held in jail for a night, and the next day at a preliminary hearing, a judge ruled that the prosecutor's office did not have enough evidence to hold Juan Orozco as they were developing their case. Their case at the point of the arrest was based almost entirely on the state auditor's office report, and the judge ruled that that's not enough, that more evidence needs to be gathered in this investigation for Juan Orozco to be put in custody.
Okay, so let's back up just a little bit to help give a little bit more context because it's kind of a complicated case. Juan Orozco is the mayor. He creates a new position called city administrator, paying $95,000. He resigns as being mayor, and the city council then immediately appoints a new person as mayor from within their own ranks. That new mayor, Doris Alvarez Roa, then appoints Juan Orozco, the immediate former mayor, into that new position, paying $95,000 that he himself created. Okay, so that's part of the setup here. All right, so that now the new mayor, who had just been appointed, not elected, is then also facing backlash for her role in all of this. And she is most likely, or is not going to continue on in mayor past the November election. What's going on with some of the backlash from the citizenry here, and is anything going to come about in terms of new leadership in the city?
There seems to be some backlash. Alvarez Roa, the current mayor, she has come out in defense of Juan Orozco in the past. It seems that according to the election results from earlier in August, it seems like people are reacting and not asking for new leadership in their city. By the numbers, Dora Alvarez Roa received 30 votes, about 8% of the vote, whereas the leading candidate for mayor, Keith Workman, he received 190 votes, which is just about half of the vote. And so it seems like people are very active in their message and in saying that they want new leadership, and they want to move past all this controversy and media attention and get back to the issues that they want fixed and bring back their community and sense of pride in Wapato.
Well, it seems like a very complicated case, and we are glad that you are there to help cover it and explain it to the people of the region. Enrique Perez de la Rosa, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
You can see all of Enrique's coverage on these and other topics at our website, nwpb.org. Thank you for joining us here in the unique Northwest.